Well, one more from Girl in Gold Boots.
Okay.
At a show in New York, in New Jersey, this young lady said, "Oh, I'm a television reporter. Oh, and I love your movies." And she says, "You know, I have a collection of over 1,000 movies, and there's one that is my most favorite movie on the face of this earth." And I said, "What is it?" And I thought she was going to tell me Dr. Zhivago. Girl in Gold Boots, her most favorite movie in her whole life. And then in Corpse Grinders, I was judging a beauty contest in Glendale, and there was 3 of us judges there, and you're supposed to stand up, and it was a big audience in a school auditorium at the time for this beauty contest, of which I was asked to judge many times, beauty contests, but this particular one, everybody was saying what they did, and it came my turn. Well, I'm a movie maker, and I made Strike Me Deadly, Girl Gold Boots, Corpse Grinders, and the guy next to me jumps up, "Corpse Grinders? You made Corpse Grinders? Oh my God, wait till I get home and tell my kids I met the man who made Corpse." And this is a beauty pageant, you know?
Right.
Not supposed to have anything.
Well, I mean, beautiful women follow you around, Ted. I mean, you had your castle.
Yeah,
You had all those lovely ladies living with you, right?
That's true.
So, in that time, you know, blood orgy of the she-devils, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, so how did that come about? Was that because you had all these beautiful women living with you?
Actually, I'd been married a long time, quite a while. You know, I think at this point it was about 13 years, and Astro Zombies started some problems in the marriage. Maybe you can guess why. I don't know. Anyway, I made some friendships that are holding true even to this day.
Sure.
But and then came Girl in Gold Boots. I mean, Blood Orgy of the She-Devils. In the Corpse Grinders, I had made certain acquaintances there that it kind of made a big hole in my marriage. It just really, literally destroyed it. So in the battle between the wife, the new person who came into my life and all that sort of thing, and hadn't quite gone into the castle yet, but it came within months of that time, I decided to take an apartment in one of these, I don't know what you'd equate it to today, but it's where a lot of young people go, and you rent your space at a pool and a workout room and all.
Sure.
I locked myself literally in that space. I only rented it for 1 month, but in 5 days, I put all of my frustrations and everything I could into doing Blood Orgy of the She-Devils. However, for 2 years prior to that, with Lester McRae from Girl in Gold Boots, Paul Briquette, a dear, dear friend who recently passed away also. Anyway, I had attended seances with them. I got involved with the kahunas in Hawaii. Not involved with them, but made aware of them.
Right.
And got into some deeply, almost paranormal type things. So I put them all on notebooks, and I went through that notebook and I wrote that script in 5 days. However, I was so focused on it that is the only screenplay, the only movie I've ever made where I followed my screenplay to the letter. I never diverted not a single line. So,
Is that because of the passion that went into it?
Well, part of it, but the focus that I put by excluding all activity outside and locking myself away in that room, I focused on it so that once I wrote in the cuts and wrote in the dialogue and wrote in this, it was impregnated into my brain so that when I was directing and shooting, it was so deeply impregnated that I never diverted, I never went away, because I knew my thinking was clear when I wrote the script. But by the time I got to shooting with all the girls and the new lady and, in my life, and the wife having difficulties, difficulties I can't explain.
Sure.
Very heartbreaking when I think back about it. But I knew that I had to rely on what was there when I wrote the script. And so it's the only movie I've ever made where when you have to provide a continuity dialogue script for foreign sales, they want to know every word that's used in the movie. You can't take the script because all movies are changed so much. But this is one that the dialogue continuity is right out of the original script because it didn't change anything. I don't think I changed a word. We had a lot of fires appearing out of nowhere, though.
Oh, no kidding.
On Blood Orgy, yeah. Just there'd be a flame on a table. We were preparing a shoot, a setup, a shot, and a fire would start. We didn't have any serious fires, but it was mysterious because no one could explain what started those fires.
Now, are the films that you make, are they kind of like a therapy for you? Are they something that is just therapeutic and it gets certain things out there for you? Because it is an eclectic collection that you've amassed. And it really kind of seems like it's based on a mood, based on a period in your life.
I think that's essentially it. I don't like to do the same thing over and over, but yet I've got people really wanting Corpse Grinders 3, and a lot of people, this is why I've stuck with the Astro Zombies, they love the Astro Zombies. When people fly in from Australia at their own expense, Germany at their own expense, London the same, Sweden the same, when they are willing to do that to participate in an Astro Zombie movie, that tells me something.
Sure.
Okay, stick with it because you got something that has a strange appeal.
Yeah.
But I've had so many people say, and not to mention one that's present,
Right.
Drew, they want to come here and either be an Astro Zombie or be whacked by an Astro Zombie.
Right.
Killed by an Astro
Well, I mean, the thing is, I met you at a Fangoria convention, is where I first met you. And, until I really got to see what you were about and the collection and catalog of films you've made, it was kind of surprising to me how diverse it was, because I just knew you as a horror film guy, and then really when you see about it, it's like, wow, what you do is so diverse. There's not many people can say that, because so many people get, forced into a corner to make a certain type of film. You've always done it your way, and what makes you happy and what you would like to do. And that's so admirable, and you don't see that with a lot of people.
Well, I don't know if it's admirable. It keeps you broke. Shanti says, including Chris Curry, who wrote the book called Film Alchemy, The Independent Cinema of Ted B. Mikels. I don't even have a copy of the book because McFarlane sells it for $50. Who can afford it,
Right.
So anyway, it's a tabletop book. But in there, Chris, after he saw The Black Klansman, he said, everybody in the world should see The Black Klansman. And I kind of jokingly refer to it as my Mississippi Burning of the 60s. Right. But I started it. There's a whole story of how I got involved with that, too. All the black folks in there, all the guys, all got their own series from that show.
Oh, no kidding.
Many of them had never been in a movie. And I find this can be true. Janina Riley from Strike Me Deadly went on to Petticoat Junction, took a copy of the movie over there, got the job at Universal. A lot of the people that have started, and I guess the number of people who have started in the industry, somewhere around 7,000.
Wow.
And that's, going back. But when you think about it, I tried to do a rundown of the camera setups, both as director and or director of photography, cinematographer, what have you. And I think I hit my $1.5 million mark of camera setups a year or so ago. And that's a lot of camera setups.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And of course, that means if we're here and then we move over here, because and you're in Griffith Park, you have a tree here, but you got a rock over here, and those are all separate camera setups,
sure.
Right? But anyway, $1.5 million is my guess.
Wow.
But I call upon that a lot when I'm directing a new movie, because I basically, especially if I'm exterior, I have a feeling, like in Strike Me Deadly, we've got a cave in the background, the mouth of it, somebody in the foreground, a guy in the distance jumping down. It's like he's going into the cave. These things never leave you. When you shoot through a car window, when you're shooting inside of a car, you draw upon your prior experiences on the next setup. So that's why a lot of my movies in the last 2 or 3 years, I only shoot 3 or 4 hours. Why? Because I don't need to study. I don't need to think about where the next camera's set up. I say, okay, the camera's right here. I want a 28 on it or a 35, whatever it happens to be. I want it about 2 inches below eye level or 2 inches above eye level, depending on the reaction I want from the character. And so I move that way. And so 3 or 4 hours, besides not having money to feed them anyway, I send everybody home.
So have you ever storyboarded your films?
I make notes. I like to have 5 minutes every day before I actually start shooting. And that's
just to kind of
basically.
lay
I've
it
had
out
a
there?
lot of people want to do storyboarding, doing the artistry and so on. What good is it? Because when I get on the set, I'm going to go by what I have to work with. I'm going to go by who's there, what's most interesting, what's the background. I hate shooting in rooms that are white. I dislike it until you know why, of course. Then you go into bounce light, forget everything else you're working. But storyboarding, I think, since I write most of the scripts, although on Astro Zombie M4, Invaders from Cyberspace, I have Gary Lester, who will be doing the blowing up the special effects like he did in Astro Zombie 3, and Richard Lester, the father. Between the two of them and Shanti, maybe Corey Udler, make contact with him. He'd like to be in on the writing too. But pretty well, when I get a scene described here, I don't need it anywhere else.
Gotcha.
Because this is my life. You know, I'm not a realtor. I'm not a car salesman. I'm a movie maker, and I think only in terms of movie making.
Right.
So when I write a scene, it's already cut and dried. I know what the setup is going to be like because I wrote it that way. Shooting across somebody who spins looking left, whatever. And so I go by that from memory. And so when I'm shooting, I take about that long to decide my setup.
Gotcha.
And also it includes the lights because I'm already aware of the problem we're going to have, especially if we're working somewhere where we used to always have, 400 amps to work with, when you're working with 5Ks and 2Ks and, brutes and mini brutes and 6-light phase and so on. That's a whole different world. Now, with the digital stuff, low lights, little 650s.
Well, that's my next question. It's like going from giant 35 millimeter cameras back in the 60s, and now you're shooting with a Sony Z1U.
Yep.
So now your setup time is
Zilch.
gone from here to here.
Yeah. Zilch.
So what has that process been like? I mean, because there's not many people who have experienced going from the giant 35 millimeters where you have 6 to 7 people on that crew who are loaders, who's operators, who got to go to the bag and load the magazines, change the magazines, to all of a sudden you're either taking a tape, I mean, the Z1U you drop a tape in, you close in it, and you're ready to go, essentially.
Ready to go. There's quite a menu on it. I really like the menu. Last movie I shot on P4, which is a movie look, not a 24p, but it's a movie look. But then I find, looking closely, because when you live this, your eye sees everything. I can see a black frame flashing by when it is not picked up by most people. But anyway, when you're doing a movement with a pan on the P4 mode on the Z1U, you get what looks to be a little strobing. I actually can see the frames of the film moving, and so this time I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do what everybody else is, plain digital.